5,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been encircled. Such situations haven't occurred in 80 years, and Syrskyi is reportedly in panic. Greetings, friends. Let's discuss the situation in Ukraine as of December 27, 2024. A significant number of events have occurred today, so let's get started. Before we begin, I'd sincerely like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps the channel grow. Thank you to everyone who has already subscribed. We'll begin with the KK Salient. Most military experts, both pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian, report active combat in the Sudzhansky Salient. The Russian army is counterattacking on nearly all fronts. However, based on footage from objective monitoring and data published by various cartographic services, the conclusion could be entirely different. At present, both sides appear to be regrouping, possibly waiting for better weather or other factors. In the meantime, some analysts have assessed the Ukrainian grouping in the Kursk region. When Ukraine initially entered the Kursk region, their forces numbered 55,000 personnel. By late December, however, estimates suggest that 10,000 to 12,000 personnel remain in the region, with an additional 10,000 to 12,000 in the city of Sumy as reserves. These reserves are also stretched thin across different border areas to prevent flanking attacks. Moving on to the northern Kupiansk direction, there are many important updates. Starting with the settlement of Dvorichna, the situation continues to unfold negatively for the Ukrainian armed forces. According to data from various cartographic services, over the past day, the Russian army secured positions in the central part of Dvorichna, took control of a radio tower, and seized the bus station. This expands their bridgehead, and the Russian army now has the capability to resume supplying their grouping via Route R79. Although the bridge has been destroyed, pontoon crossings can be established in this area, allowing for a higher volume of supplies to be sent to the Ukrainian bank of the Oskil River. This indicates that the Russian Federation's bridgehead on the Ukrainian side of the Oskil has been firmly established, and the battle for Dvorichna is nearing its conclusion. Following this, another flower will bloom. This will undoubtedly be the Dvorichna flower. It is hard to predict where exactly the Ukrainian army will be able to halt the Russian advance. Further north in the Kupiansk direction, Ukrainian sources have released footage of Russian artillery striking Ukrainian forward positions. In November, during an unclear Russian offensive, Russian units managed to enter northern Kupiansk and establish positions. Intense fighting ensued, raising hopes among pro-Russian sectors of the internet. However, the Ukrainians managed to stabilize the front line, pushing back Russian forces. Today, new footage shows a significant number of artillery strikes. One strike specifically targeted a building of interest. Based on this footage, contested territory was reassessed in favor of the Ukrainian armed forces. It remains unclear what is happening in the northeastern part of Kupiansk, which includes factories and other facilities. Next, we move to the central Kupiansk direction. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced that Russian forces had fully cleared the settlement of Zagryzovo. Additionally, pro-Russian sources reported that Russian units not only cleared Zagryzovo, but also secured the outskirts of Boguslavka. The central Kupiansk direction is often referred to as the Boguslavka direction, named after the village at the heart of this front. It appears this direction is nearing its conclusion as fighting has begun for the key settlement of Boguslavka. Next, we move to the southern Kupiansk, or Lyman direction. Today, the Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed that during combat operations, the small village of Ivanivka, located on the Ukrainian side of the Zherebets River, came under full and secure control of the Russian army. Yesterday, this information had already been shared by various predominantly pro-Russian cartographic services. The adjustments to the maps published yesterday have now been confirmed by the Ministry of Defense, which is significant. This confirmation not only validates control, but also indicates consolidation, suggesting that the front line has likely advanced significantly west of Ivanivka, extending further south and northwest. We then move to Chasiv Yar, where the situation for Ukrainian forces in the industrial zone around the factory is becoming critical. As we have discussed previously, Russian forces have established complete fire control over the perimeter of this settlement. Any movement near the refractory factory or the industrial zone is closely monitored and immediately targeted. For example, yesterday we discussed how another group of Ukrainian forces tried to approach Chasiv Yar from the northwest. As soon as their vehicles drew near, they were destroyed almost instantly. Today, more footage has been published showing Ukrainian forces attempting to enter the settlement on foot in the same area. A platoon was observed moving in short bursts from building to building, likely preparing for a further push toward the aggregate factory. However, Russian drones hovering over the area detected their movements, triggering immediate artillery strikes on Ukrainian forward positions. This indicates that, while fighting continues to deplete Ukrainian forces near the railway station and aggregate factory, the Russians maintain the upper hand in monitoring and targeting movements. Next, we head to the Pokrovsk direction, where the Russian armed forces are steadily leveling the front line along the southern perimeter of the settlement of Pokrovsk. According to various cartographic services, during combat operations, Russian forces managed to secure another forested area northwest of the village of Shevchenko. Additionally, the Ministry of Defense reported today that the settlement of Novi Trud has come under full Russian control. This gradual leveling of the front line is evident, but no active breakthroughs aimed at advancing directly into Pokrovsk are currently being undertaken. At present, movement on the Pokrovsk direction is primarily westward toward the Dnipro region. Over the past day, adjustments to the front line have been noted across the area. For instance, south of Novovasilivka, pro-Ukrainian cartographic services reported that Russian units had taken control of small farms and fields. Slightly further south, Russian forces have initiated a flanking maneuver around the settlements of Nova Yelizavetivka and Nadezhdinka. It is likely that Russian forces will soon attempt to storm Nadezhdinka from the north. Additionally, reports indicate that Russian forces have started to encircle Nova Yelizavetivka from the south and southeast. According to various cartographic services, including both pro-Ukrainian and neutral sources, Russian units have established full control over the settlement of Ukrainka and are actively advancing toward Yasinove. We observe that the Ukrainian armed forces are offering little resistance in these areas. However, the critical point is that if this cluster of small villages, described as a nest, falls, it will create a highly precarious situation for Ukrainian units in the Andriivka fortified area. The fall of this cluster would allow Russian forces to push southward and effectively close the encirclement of Ukrainian formations in Andriivka and nearby villages. Next, we move to the settlements of Solntsevka and Zarya, where reports indicate that the Russian army has significantly expanded its control zone and has come close to the settlements of Slavyanka and Petropavlovka. While there are no objective control visuals to confirm this information yet, the dynamics in this area are gaining momentum, signaling the onset of combat for the Andriivka fortified area. Moving on to the settlement of Kurakov, the last updates regarding this location were received on December 26th. On December 25th to 26th, a significant number of videos were published showing Russian forces deploying their tricolors in the western part of central Kurakov. Since then, no further updates have been reported. It appears that the Russian units have completed their primary objectives, advanced to the Kurakov power plant, and are now focusing on encircling it from the south and southwest to move toward the settlement of Daknoye. Today, reports indicate that Russian forces have expanded their control zone and begun advancing along the Suki Yali River toward the settlement of Yantanoye. According to cartographic data, part of the stronghold between Uspanovka and Yantanoye has been cleared and is now under Russian control. Next, we move to the area of Rozliv and Constantinople. Ukrainian sources have published objective control footage showing a significant number of FPV drone, artillery and mortar strikes on Russian assault units operating near Velikaya Novoselka. The footage reveals activity from Velikaya Novoselka to Rozliv, with several episodes geolocated. One geolocated point indicates that the distance between Russian forward positions and the settlement of Rozliv is no more than 2.6 kilometers. We now turn to Velikaya Novoselka, where critical developments are unfolding. Yesterday, we discussed the choices facing the Russian army regarding their assault on Velikaya Novoselka, including the possibility of advancing from Novi Komar toward a stronghold northwest of Velikaya Novoselka, attacking from both the east and south. However, we noted the risks of such a maneuver due to the potential overextension of forces, which could lead to significant losses. Today, objective control footage has clarified the situation. The Russian Federation appears to have decided to take a calculated risk. Reconnaissance data suggests that Ukrainian positions northwest of Velikaya Novoselka are in a critical state, prompting Russian forces to advance southward toward the stronghold. Footage confirms that Russian assault units have successfully cut the M05-10 highway between Velikaya Novoselka and Gulye Pol. This indicates that Russian forces may continue their offensive toward the stronghold, though the outcome remains uncertain. Should Russian units manage to take control of the stronghold and push Ukrainian forces toward Volnoy Pol, Velikaya Novoselka will be completely encircled. This would mark the first full-scale classic encirclement of a settlement since the start of the war in Ukraine. With the town entirely surrounded by Russian forces, such an achievement has not been accomplished elsewhere to date.